The greatest threat to global energy infrastructure today, it really isn't a lack of oil.
Right.
And it's not some highly sophisticated cyber attack either. It's actually, it's a cardboard box.
Cardboard box. Yeah, it sounds crazy when you put it like that.
It does, but think about specifically the cardboard box carried by a retiring veteran who is, walking out the gates of a massive offshore rig or a chemical processing plant for the very last time.
Yeah, you see them carrying a coffee mug, maybe, I don't know, a framed picture of their family.
Exactly. But inside their head, they are walking away with 30 or 40 years of highly specific, completely undocumented knowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the person who knows exactly which release valve sticks when the ambient temperature drops below freezing.
Yeah, or they know that specific, almost imperceptible hum a generator makes, like 30 seconds before a pressure seal blows.
Right. That is tacit knowledge. It's the physical intuition you only get from decades of getting your hands dirty and, frankly, making mistakes. And right now, across oil, gas, manufacturing, heavy industrial, an entire generation of these veterans is retiring all at once. They call it the silver tsunami.
The silver tsunami, yeah.
And every time one of those cardboard boxes goes out the gate, invaluable, unwritten intuition just goes with it.
It creates a massive operational vacuum. I mean, it's not hyperbole to say this brain drain poses one of the greatest safety and economic risks these heavy industries have ever faced.
It's terrifying.
Because you cannot replace 40 years of multisensory intuition by handing a 22-year-old engineering graduate a hard hat and like a stack of 3-ring binders.
No, definitely not. Okay, let's unpack this. We have this massive looming problem, this silver tsunami. So for today's deep dive, we're focusing on a fascinating attempt to solve it.
And it is fascinating.
It really is. We're looking at a press release from June 25, 2026. This was issued by EON AI Ventures, and they're announcing the launch of a platform called EON Universal. And the stated mission here is wild. Capturing decades of human intuition, translating it into a machine-readable format, and then passing it seamlessly to a much less experienced generation.
A huge ambition.
Huge. But before we get into the actual tech, I have to imagine part of the reason this is so hard is that industrial facilities aren't built like consumer products, right? Like you don't just order an oil rig off a catalog and get the exact same layout every single time.
That is the core bottleneck of industrial training right there. Modern processing plants are incredibly complex, but more importantly, they are individually engineered.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning you could have 2 refineries owned by the exact same company, built in the exact same decade, producing the exact same chemical, and they will have completely different internal piping.
Wow, really?
Oh, yeah. One might have legacy analog systems from the 1980s spliced haphazardly onto, digital sensors from the 2010s.
Like a Frankenstein machine.
Exactly. And the other might have been completely retrofitted. A blueprint from 1995 rarely reflects the 4 different structural changes made by maintenance crews over the intervening 30 years.
Which means reading a standard manual is practically useless.
Pretty much.
Because if the manual says, turn valve C, but valve C was relocated behind a secondary boiler back in 2014, the manual might actually cause a disaster.
It absolutely could.
So hoping for the best with generic PDFs just isn't an option. And I think this is where EON Universal steps in. The phrase that jumped out at me from the source material is Facility-Agnostic Field Intelligence.
Yes. Facility-agnostic is the linchpin of their entire approach.
Okay.
Because the legacy method industrial training relied heavily on site-specific memorization. Yeah. A worker spent years at one specific plant, slowly memorizing its unique, undocumented quirks.
Right.
But with the workforce turning over so rapidly due to this silver tsunami, companies simply do not have the luxury of time.
They can't wait.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They cannot wait 5 years for a new hire to memorize a facility's layout. They need a way to transfer expertise dynamically, regardless of where the worker is actually standing.
Okay, let me try to make this relatable for you listening, because facility agnostic can sound a bit like, corporate jargon.
Sure.
Think about learning how to drive a manual transmission car.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. If you take the time to learn the underlying mechanics, like how a clutch actually separates the engine from the transmission, how the friction point feels, how the gears physically engage to change the torque, you build a foundational physical understanding, and once you possess that component-level knowledge, you can slide into the driver's seat of a Honda, a Ford truck, or, I don't know, a vintage Porsche, and you can drive them all.
You're car agnostic.
Yes, you are car agnostic. You might need a second to find the reverse gear, but the physics don't change. However, if your training consisted of rote memorization someone told you, move the stick exactly 3 inches forward and 2 inches right, you're in trouble. Yeah, the second I put you in a truck with a different layout, you'd stall out and crash immediately.
That analogy perfectly captures the shift EON Universal is making. What's fascinating here is, instead of mapping a single, highly specific facility, which is incredibly time-consuming and immediately useless if the worker gets transferred to a new plant.
Right.
The system captures how the equipment works and behaves at the component level. It builds a reusable, machine-readable library of understanding.
Okay.
It knows the fundamental physics of, say, a centrifugal pump, how it behaves under varying pressures, and its common failure modes. It understands the pump regardless of whether it happens to be bolted to a rig in the Gulf of Mexico or a processing plant in Texas.
I want to dig into the actual mechanism of how a worker uses this, though, because it's one thing to have a digital library of pump physics on a server somewhere.
Right.
It's another thing to actually help the guy holding a wrench in the rain. According to the release, the worker wears assisted reality glasses or uses a ruggedized tablet. They walk up to a piece of machinery, and the system literally recognizes the equipment on site. How is it doing that? Is it like scanning a QR code or something?
It goes a lot deeper than simple tags or QR codes. The camera on the worker's assisted reality glasses feeds visual data into EON's system.
Okay.
And the computer vision identifies the geometry, the physical components, the manufacturer markings, and the spatial context. It then instantly matches that visual input against its deep back-end library.
Wow.
So the system basically says, okay, I see the geometries of a multi-stage compressor, I pull up the physics engine for that exact component, and I overlay the operational data.
That's wild.
The burden of site-specific memorization is completely lifted from the human worker and placed onto the software. The AI guides the worker through the facility, even if that worker has literally never set foot on that specific site before.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Giving a brand new 22-year-old worker a pair of AI glasses, patting them on the back, and sending them out into a live, highly dangerous industrial facility on day one, that sounds terrifying.
If it is.
Frankly, no matter how smart the AI is, relying entirely on glasses while walking around highly pressurized, flammable materials seems like a massive liability.
Any seasoned operations manager would have the exact same visceral reaction. You absolutely cannot drop a novice into a high-consequence environment on day one and tell them to just follow the glowing arrows in their glasses.
Yeah, they'd freeze up.
The cognitive load alone would cause them to panic.
Yeah.
And EON AI Ventures understands that skepticism, which is why EON Universal is built around a very deliberate two-stage adoption strategy.
Okay.
The entire process starts far away from the live pipes. It begins in the training center.
Ah, because the training center is a safe sandbox. If you mess up, nobody gets hurt.
Exactly.
But let me push back on this too. A virtual reality headset in an air-conditioned room doesn't mimic the adrenaline of standing on an offshore rig in the pouring rain.
No, it doesn't.
So if this is just a fancy training software disguised as field tech, how does playing a digital simulation actually help when things go wrong in the real world?
That friction between the sterile classroom and the chaotic real world is exactly what this two-stage approach solves.
How so?
Well, when a worker is panicking on a real rig, their cognitive load is maxed out. They can't think about the underlying mechanics. The training center strips away that environmental panic, allowing them to master the component logic first.
I see.
Because EON Universal understands the actual physics of the equipment, the competence built in the digital sandbox transfers directly to the live operations.
Oh.
They're not memorizing a video game level. They're internalizing the physical rules of the machinery.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mats Johansson, the president of EON AI Ventures, addressed this directly in the release. He stated, "We are not promising a 30-year veteran on day one. We deliver a reliable, well-guided technician immediately and a system that gets measurably better with every job."
I see. It's a progression. Training isn't being sold as some isolated, separate product that you finish and then just throw away.
Exactly.
The simulation is the on-ramp. You build the worker's muscle memory, and, perhaps more importantly, you build their trust in the AI guide in a safe room.
Yes, trust is key.
Once they learn how the system communicates, they take that exact same intelligence, running on the exact same AR glasses, out into the field.
Which presents a much lower risk path for an incredibly cautious industry. You prove the value in the classroom, build the worker's confidence, and then seamlessly transition that digital safety net into the live environment.
Which brings up an interesting point about the training itself. If EON Universal starts its life as a simulator in a training center, people might wonder why this is new. Industrial training simulators have been around for decades.
Oh, sure.
Like flight simulators, rig simulators, this isn't a new concept at all.
It's not. But the difference lies between following a scripted sequence and possessing actual comprehension.
Okay, explain that.
Think about how a conventional legacy simulator operates. An instructional designer sits down and hard codes one specific, rigid sequence of events.
Right.
The system then simply acts as a binary checklist. The simulation asks, did the learner press the green button? Yes. Did they turn the wheel to the right? Yes. It doesn't know why the button was pressed. It just checks the box.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I love thinking about this in terms of video games.
Oh, yeah.
A conventional legacy simulator is basically a choose-your-own-adventure book. There is only one pre-authored path to success. If you step off the path, the simulation just flashes game over or artificially forces you back onto the rails.
Right, it's very rigid.
It is entirely a test of rote memorization. EON Universal, based on this documentation, functions more like an open-world physics engine.
That is the perfect distinction. EON Universal has a foundational layer that older systems lack entirely, a functional understanding of physical reality. It does not run a static script.
So what happens if you mess up?
Well, if a worker makes an unprompted mistake in the EON sandbox, say opening a release valve entirely out of sequence, the system doesn't just display a wrong button error.
It actually reacts.
It organically calculates the physical consequences. It simulates the digital pressure spike in the adjacent pipes, triggers the appropriate warning alarms, and forces the worker to deal with the dynamic crisis they just created.
Wow. There is a fantastic specific example of this in the source text regarding a de-energized pump. It really highlights how EON Universal generates conditional procedures that branch out based on live conditions.
The pump example is great.
Imagine a worker is assigned to do maintenance on a massive industrial pump. They've shut off the electrical power, so the pump is technically de-energized. A basic legacy simulator would just recognize the power is off and tell the worker, proceed to step 3, open the casing.
Right, check the box.
But EON Universal understands fluid dynamics. It recognizes the physical reality that even without power, the heavy fluid trapped inside that specific pump might still hold dangerous, latent pressure. It dynamically inserts a new requirement, forcing the worker to safely bleed off that residual pressure before they are allowed to proceed.
That level of dynamic reasoning is vital for safety. Real-world machinery rarely follows the ideal script. Because it operates as a physics engine, the EON system can dynamically inject and diagnose faults.
It's incredible.
It generates entirely new but engineering-valid training scenarios on the fly. And critically, it assesses a worker based on their reasoning, not just their button presses.
Right.
The system evaluates whether the worker understands why they need to check the pressure gauge, rather than just rewarding them for clicking a glowing green box on a screen.
It totally shifts the paradigm from, did you follow the steps, to, do you understand the machine? Now, just to be thorough, the source text does clarify that EON Universal is designed to complement, not entirely replace, existing deep process simulators.
Right, a necessary caveat for industry insiders. Some massive petrochemical companies run these hyper-detailed process fidelity simulators that model the fluid dynamics of an entire multi-billion-dollar refinery down to the microscopic chemical level.
They're huge systems.
Massive. EON doesn't seek to replace those mathematical models. Instead, it acts as the connective tissue between those deep, facility-wide simulations and the actual human being holding a wrench.
Ah, nice.
Dan Lajerskar, the founder and chairman, captured the ambition in the press release when he noted, for decades, the industry has wanted to put an expert in every worker's ear, and it simply wasn't possible.
Ah.
This technology is the realization of that long-held dream.
But taking that theoretical dream and deploying it into a facility filled with combustible gas requires incredibly specific engineering.
Very much so.
Because you can't just slap a consumer-grade tablet into a rugged case and walk onto an oil rig. A single spark from a lithium-ion battery could ignite the atmosphere.
Which is why the hardware component is so heavily emphasized here. EON Universal is deployed across assisted reality, glasses, and tablets. But in classified hazardous areas like Zone 1 chemical plants or drilling platforms, they utilize certified intrinsically safe hardware.
Intrinsically safe, okay.
Yes. These devices are physically engineered so they simply cannot generate a spark or reach a temperature high enough to ignite explosive gases, even if the device is crushed or short circuits. EON pairs their software exclusively with hardware rated for those extreme environments, ensuring the deployment itself doesn't become a safety hazard.
That attention to safety really makes sense when you look at the company behind this. The press release details EON AI Ventures as an enterprise software company specializing in work intelligence.
Right, they aren't newcomers.
No, they aren't some trendy Silicon Valley startup that pivoted to industrial tech 6 months ago. The text notes they are building on over 25 years of immersive simulation and AI technology from the broader EON group. They bring a deep pedigree to this.
As they absolutely do.
I noticed they describe their overarching platform as an intelligence flywheel, which consists of a suite of specific products: Genesis, Field IQ, and Assess IQ. How do these distinct pieces actually fit together to create this flywheel effect?
The flywheel concept is about creating a continuous loop of learning and execution.
Okay.
Think of it sequentially. First, you have Genesis. This is the engine that ingests the 3D computer-aided design models, the engineering specs, and the physics logic, and automatically generates the interactive training simulations. It builds the digital sandbox.
Okay, so Genesis builds the curriculum, then a worker goes into the VR center, and that's where Assess IQ comes in.
Correct. As the worker engages with the Genesis-created simulation, Assess IQ acts as the evaluator. But as we discussed, it isn't just grading a multiple-choice test.
Right.
It is tracking the worker's physical movements, their decision-making process, and their reaction to dynamic faults. It verifies that the worker possesses true competence and reasoning, not just memorization.
And once Assess IQ signs off on their competence, they walk out into the live facility, and that's when Field IQ takes over on their AR glasses.
Exactly.
Field IQ overlays the operational data, the real-time pressure readings, and the step-by-step guidance onto the physical machine they are looking at. Genesis builds the knowledge, Assess IQ verifies the human understanding, and Field IQ applies it in the real world. That is a brilliant loop.
It really is.
But beyond just training people better, the press release makes a very bold claim. It states that EON Universal fundamentally changes the economics of training. So what does this all mean? When I read that, it struck me that building physical training centers must be a massive capital sink. Are they essentially replacing physical real estate with digital assets?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they are completely redefining the capital expenditure model for industrial companies.
How so?
Historically, a training center is rigidly constrained by the physical equipment it can afford to purchase, house, and maintain. Let's say a major energy company wants its workers to be proficient in repairing 10 different configurations of a high-pressure, multi-stage pump. Under the legacy model, that company has to purchase 10 distinct, multi-million-dollar physical pump rigs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They have to build a massive warehouse to store them. They have to hire specialized technicians just to maintain the training equipment. And they have to regularly take those expensive rigs offline to simulate faults.
The footprint and the cost of that are astronomical. You're talking tens of millions of dollars just to set up a classroom.
And even with that massive investment, your workers are only trained on those 10 specific configurations. The moment they encounter an 11th variation in the field, they are flying blind.
Right.
By shifting to EON Universal, the economics flip. Because EON's platform relies on a component-level physics library, it can digitally generate an infinite, varied set of valid pump configurations.
Wow.
You don't have to build 10 physical rigs. You spin up 100 digital variations. The workers are exposed to the massive diversity of real-world equipment they will actually encounter, vastly widening the scope of their competence, while simultaneously eliminating the need to buy and house heavy physical machinery. You scale expertise endlessly without scaling the physical infrastructure.
It's an incredible economic lever. So stepping back and looking at the entire journey we've mapped out today, we started with this looming existential crisis for heavy industry, the silver tsunami. Tens of thousands of veterans taking decades of undocumented multisensory intuition out the door in cardboard boxes. The proposed solution is a radical shift away from site-specific memorization toward facility-agnostic AI.
Right.
A system that understands the fundamental physics of the machinery, tests the reasoning of new workers in a highly dynamic open-world digital sandbox, and then seamlessly walks out into the live hazardous field with them, serving as an expert guide hovering right in their peripheral vision.
It creates an unbroken continuum of knowledge. It captures the tacit wisdom of the retiring generation, verifies that the new generation understands it, and compounds that intelligence over time.
Yeah.
But as this technology matures, it forces us to grapple with a profound philosophical shift regarding the future of labor. The explicit goal of the intelligence flywheel is to absorb human intuition into the machine layer.
To digitize the veteran's brain, essentially.
Yes. So if the artificial intelligence guiding your glasses eventually holds the combined, synthesized operational wisdom of 10,000 retired experts, what happens to our definition of a human expert 20 years from now?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Right. Will future industrial workers even need to intimately understand the fluid dynamics and underlying mechanics of the complex machines they are maintaining? Or will the primary skill, the core competency of human labor, simply evolve into trusting, managing, and acting as the physical hands for the dynamic reasoning of their AI guide?
Are we destined to just be the hands for the AI's brain? That completely redefines the concept of skilled labor. It shifts the value of a worker from knowing the answer to knowing how to collaborate with the system that holds the answer.
Exactly.
That is a wild, slightly unsettling, but really fascinating thought to leave on. But it certainly changes the perspective. The next time you picture that retiring veteran walking out the gates of the refinery, carrying his cardboard box and his coffee mug, it isn't quite as tragic. His 40 years of unwritten intuition didn't just vanish into the ether. It got uploaded, analyzed, and integrated into the flywheel, ready to be downloaded into the AR glasses of the 22-year-old kid who takes his place tomorrow.